Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie. They're selling the lie. Say every voice counts, but watch who gets lifted. Some stories vanish, some get the spotlight shifted. Depends on what trends and what keeps them gifted. They're selling the lie. I won't believe them, I wanna believe, but truth's always stuck in between. Static and spin, drown the signal again. Nothing is what it seems. I wanna believe you, but every headline turns daylight into redesigned skies. Facts get twisted, context missing. We choke on the simplified alibis. Wanna believe you, but all I see is shadows where the answers should shine. The fact is fiction.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories, unfiltered.
Good afternoon, Maine. This is Chuck Ellis, and you are watching the Muddy Waters Podcast. And as you all know at this point, we exist to help the people in Maine better understand what's going on by telling the stories, largely the stories that mainstream media won't cover. They're starting to cover some stuff. Obviously, the Maine Wire is doing incredible work. Unquire's uncovering some great stuff as well. But we try to tell stories. It's really hard for people to discredit a story as much as it is to claim that facts don't happen. But when people tell a story, it's a lot harder for them. And so that's one of the things that we like to do. So we bring on people who have interesting stories, or people who are out there fighting for the freedoms and truth and all that other kind of stuff. And that person today who's joining us is Josh Tabor, who is a school board member at MSAD 60. Is that right?
That is correct. Thanks, Chuck.
Known as Noble, right? The Noble School District. Not acting up to its name these days, is it?
I wish we were doing a better job. I know that there's a lot of people in our community, North Berwick and Lebanon, who do want to live up to that name, that sense of integrity, that sense of loyalty, that sense of hard work. So I know there's a lot of people in our community who want to do that, and I'd love to see us get there. We've got some things to work through.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not alone is the reality, right? Like most of the school districts in Maine fall into this category. Unfortunately, this is why it's so important for people to run for school board and sit on school boards, because a lot of this stuff is happening, but we're not hearing as much about it because we don't have school board members with guts and willingness to bring up things that shouldn't be controversial but are controversial. And yet it's kind of the attitude is that by us bringing it up, we're the ones that are being controversial.
Yeah, right. That's the funny thing. When you ask questions, you're the one that is offensive. It's like, wait, all I did was ask the question. The answer could have been offensive to you, but the question should not be offensive.
Yeah, it reminds me, and we'll get into it, but it gets around like one of the hottest issues, I think in our culture here in the state of Maine anyway, which is the issue of gender identity and all that ideology that's being pushed by the radical left. But like, it reminds me of when I went to Augusta to testify on this kind of basically this same issue of protecting girls' sports and spaces, right? And I remember sitting there and I didn't just go and testify. I also listened to people testifying on the other side. And just about every one of them tried to manipulate you with emotion by saying, even just having this conversation today is dangerous to trans people. It's like, okay, so like, let me just break this down for a moment. Like, you're saying having a conversation in order to be able to understand and come to a place of truth is dangerous. So you're saying we can't have the conversation. So we don't even if, like, let's just say, even if this nonsense was not nonsense, even if there were really people who were born in the wrong bodies and they had this really difficult life and they needed to be helped to be transitioned into the appropriate body. Let's say that's true, right? It's not, but let's say it is for just a moment. Like, do you not understand how difficult it is for the average person to understand and come to a place of understanding, especially when you're dealing with, like, what is it, 70 something genders that they supposedly have with all these different pronouns? Like, even if what you're saying is true, in order for people who don't agree with you right now to come to a place of agreement, there needs to be conversation, and you're trying to silence that conversation and saying, by asking questions and talking about this, it's dangerous.
Right. So I've had quite a few conversations. Actually, what I was encouraged by a board member who made the assumption I have never spoken to a trans man or a trans woman. And I have. I have individuals who are gay and lesbians. I have spoken to trans men and women. Right. I've had conversations, and individually, the conversations have been. Honestly, I mean, they've been respectful. They're not yelling and screaming at me, right? It's not like you see on, like, television or news, or the salaciousness that people want. It's not like that, actually. We disagree in some areas, right? And
Sure.
It's okay to state our positions where we disagree, but honestly, what they want is they want to be treated, with dignity. And that's a human desire, right? We all want to be treated with worth. We all want to feel important and valuable. We want to feel like we can contribute to our organizations, our communities. Like, we want that opportunity. Everyone deserves that opportunity. And I'm a big advocate of dignity. Like, everyone should be treated with respect and dignity. But being treated with dignity does not excuse you from being asked difficult questions, or to wrestle with things that are true. So when people say, oh, it's dangerous to have this conversation, I simply say, what's the evidence? Because there's been lots of research, and actually DIAG has done a wonderful job with a lot of the research around that's been used by people pushing the agenda of gender identity. And they have gone through and they have pointed out all of the weaknesses in the research. The fact that they haven't been able to replicate any of the research that they quote, right? So, and there's been tons of things wrong. The timetables are wrong, the definitions are wrong, the procedures are wrong. And on their website, diag.com, that's DI-AG.org, I believe. And they do a really good job of going through it, And so one of the reason I bring it up is one of the researchers, they say that students who are questioning their identity are at a much higher rate for taking their own life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually not true. Statistically, right. It is not true. And that's what they point out. This is not true. As a matter of fact, I'm talking mostly adolescents. So that's kind of my focus as a school board member. Adolescents who are questioning their gender identity also have a lot of other areas that they struggle in. And when they are compared with those groups, so they take these groups of kids who have similar struggles, and then they add in the ones, or they separate the two groups into gender identity, ones who are questioning their gender identity versus just anxious, depressed, all those different things. There is no difference between the two groups. So, they said you can't compare people who are mentally unhealthy, right? I mean, that's what it is, right? We all have moments. I've been mentally unhealthy at some points in my life, but when you're mentally unhealthy, you're not well, and you need supports, and you need guidance, and you need boundaries, right? But they're saying, oh, hey, when you compare us to, the general healthy population, we're at greater risk. Well, yeah, that's true for everybody who's mentally struggling, right? People who are mentally struggling are at greater risk than those who are mentally well. That's just true. It doesn't matter. So that's an example of how they use research to make a statement that's not true and force everyone else to tiptoe around their issues. I have a heart. My gosh, I work in a school district who is we've lost 2 students in 12 months 2 students who have taken their own lives, right? So like, it's very personal to me. When people say that to me, I go, I have dealt with it as a faculty member twice in 12 months. And I knew one of the students was in my class. So like, this is very personal. Like you don't say something like that thinking that someone hasn't dealt with it firsthand and walked all their friends through this difficult time. Like, it's so insensitive. It really is. And it's used as a tactic to stop the conversation instead of saying, like, I recognize it as like that's when they get uncomfortable with what the questions I'm asking, right? Is when they throw these things out to try to sideswipe the conversation. It's like, no, that's not true. And let's bring it. If we want to talk about that, we can talk about that. But let's actually deal with the question that we're supposed to be dealing with. And my issue, Chuck, what I get so upset about right now is we do have the Maine Human Rights Law, and absolutely no one should be bullied or harassed or denied opportunity in our great state of Maine because of who they feel they are. They deserve dignity and opportunity. I don't have a problem with the Maine Human Rights Law.
Well, let's be clear. Let's be clear too. Like, I just want to. You don't even have to say anything after "no one should be bullied."
Thank you.
Right? It's like none of us are okay with bullying. Like, that's not what this is about.
Right. That's right. It's not, right? It's people trying to say something that is frankly unhealthy, is like, hey, it's normal. Actually, it's not, right? And it's interesting. Here's one of the things, right? The Maine Human Rights Law, in my opinion, conflicts itself, right? If you're going to protect a class based on sex, and then you're going to protect a class based on whatever I identify as, well, one is a thought and one is biological reality, right? They're going to clash. They are naturally going to clash. And I'm waiting for some guidance, as a board member, I'm waiting for our legal entity. Provide us guidance, because in schools, we have this clashing every single day in our buildings. And you know what? How much guidance there is? None. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to touch it because it's being battled between Maine and the federal government. Yeah.
Well, let's go to. There's a couple of things, like, just for fun, to kind of talk about like some of the battles that you're having, and also to, like, people have probably seen these viral videos anyway, but I think it's worth going there, because like there are a couple of really good. It's just a really good example of what happens when you're just trying to stand up for truth and like how you get treated. And I want to continue more talking about like the Maine Human Rights Act, and I think it's fascinating. All right, give me just one moment while I get this queued up. This is the one, I think. All right, here we go. All right. So this is the first one. This is I lied. This is the first one here, and this is the one that went viral.
Being suspended because they are using the wrong pronoun. Again, I was aghast. I didn't realize that. One is biologically facts. It's actually XX chromosomes, XY chromosomes. Those are facts. We can't change those. It doesn't matter what our opinion is. We can't change those things. Those are immutable facts. And I'm wondering, are we? What I'm asking, my question is, are we suspending students for immutable facts? That's what I'm asking.
Not for making a genuine mistake. If somebody is doing what you're sort of doing here and sort of trying to attack somebody if you don't agree with it, that's very different. And I think that's what they're talking about. Is I'm going to keep saying it because I know it bothers you. Then yes, this policy should apply.
I think that you are aligned by assuming that I'm attacking anybody.
But I don't know what you mean, because I'm
asking you a general question.
You accidentally what is your goal here? If they're allowed to be designated,
I do not believe it is harmful to speak the truth.
you only get harmful to call something you don't identify with called in.
I don't think it's harmful to speak the truth.
So, that's the first one.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, and that one lit off like fire. So like that's one of the things that's crazy to me is like I'm sure I knew that it was possible that kids might be suspended for something like this, but I think this came about because some students were actually suspended for this?
Yeah, let me give the context for this, right? So
Yeah.
that video that went viral was actually the second conversation of this meeting, right? So the context of that video, the week prior to, I was meeting with a community member, right, who just we were just talking about things, and I said, hey, how are you kids doing in school? And they're like, well, they were just suspended. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I said, if you don't want to share, that's fine. No, they said, no, they misgendered a student and were suspended for it. And I said, really? And they said, yeah, and they were very upset by it. They didn't give me the specific context or anything like that, right? But I've always felt in my mind that it's compelled speech. You can't make kids use a preferred pronoun. You can't. It's called compelled speech. Every single child in our schools, just like us, has a First Amendment right to call it as we see it. Right. So then, of course, I saw this policy on the agenda and I said, I wonder if this is the policy they're using to suspend kids. So that's exactly the question that I ask, right? Immutable facts. This person that I'm looking at in my class looks like let's just say, female. So the student has every right, legally, every right to use she, her pronouns, period. Now, they don't have to do it being a jerk way, but they have every right to do it. And then I find out our school district is suspending kids. So you notice that in that video, our superintendent, right? Our superintendent, our assistant superintendent, and there were administrators in the audience at that meeting. No one stood up to say, no, we are not suspending kids.
Mm-hmm.
They had the opportunity right there to publicly say, no, we are not suspending students. They didn't. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why it went viral is like no one denied it, right? Come to find out, the meeting that happened 2 weeks after that, the superintendent submits a letter to the board and reads it out loud to public and says that no student has been suspended from school due to misgendering another student. 2 weeks later, the parents who had their child suspended stand up and say, it's the specificity of your words that is the problem. You're right. My child wasn't suspended from school because of misgendering a student. They were suspended in school because of it. And this is the kind of stuff that is annoying, right? Because the question is, are we disciplining kids? I mean, if it's suspension means we are taking away a child's right to learn in their general class, right? Their classroom setting. If we're changing that, then we are definitely disciplining a child, and we are disciplining kids. And it's definitely happening in this district. I'm sure that it's happening in several other districts. They call it hate speech is what they do. They call it hate speech. Well, using what biologically reality is, what we see in every day, it doesn't matter what someone wants to be called. If we are using biological reality, by what we see and what we know, what we've experienced for the last 8 years that we've been working with this other student in class, they have every right legally to use whatever pronoun they deem appropriate, so long as they're not using it in a disparaging way. So it makes me so mad. And this is where, I mean, I could go on a deep rabbit hole with ACA and probably bore all your audience members to tears. But the problem is not, I mean, the law has a problem. It does, right? But the bigger issue for me as a board member is the implementation of these laws, like how these policies are being written, and then what our administration and district administration is doing in its implementation practices. It boggles the mind. I don't know how an objective person can say that, like we're being objective. Like you're not being
Yeah.
objective in the implementation. That's the problem. This is why so many parents are upset with public education, because it's not objective anymore.
100%. I mean, fortunately, we still have mathematics, although they're trying hard not to teach that. But like mathematics is like clear. It's like 2 + 2 = 4. There is no, it doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter, like you can't rewrite it. It like math either works or it doesn't.
Yep.
It's one place where objective reality is there. Although they're doing weird stuff with it to make sure that people don't understand it. I think they're like, being somebody, I was a math major and I loved math growing up. And I almost feel like part of this, I could create a conspiracy theory around the intentionally poorly teaching mathematics in order to hinder people's ability to develop problem solving skills so that they're more easily to manage and control. I feel like I could do that because like math, that's one of the best things that math teaches you is how to solve problems, how to be like, okay, I understand this and I understand this. This is what I don't understand. How do I get there? Right? Like you do that in life. You start and one of the ways that you train your brain how to do that is through mathematics, through solving equations, and it has far-reaching implications. But at least in math, we have objectivity is the point that I was getting at there. But yeah, I mean, like a lot of this nonsense that's happening is it's problematic for a variety of reasons, but it's something that they can't prove to be true. They spout a narrative, and then you either agree with that narrative or you get in trouble. I just think it's also like it's dangerous. They're so focused on these kids that are identifying as trans, and they're concerned with their mental health, except when it comes to like speaking truth to them, right? There's this sense that like it's actually not, like, to your point that you had at the very end, I don't think it's harmful to speak the truth, right? And I do not believe it is harmful. I think it's actually the problem that we're having is that these kids who are dealing with serious, and I think this is the thing, I have compassion. I'm very concerned about these kids who have mental health, who have this belief fostered by others. They didn't come up with it on their own, by the way, but fostered by others that they might be in the wrong gender, right? They might be in the wrong body. I'm very concerned for those kids. I just don't think that the response is that we should lie to them and agree with them and tell them that they are in the wrong body when there is actually no scientific evidence to support that outside of, not even outside of, there is no evidence to support that.
Yeah. So on this topic, because it's so relevant, that video went viral, and I was contacted by the co-executive directors of LGB Courage Coalition. This is a group started in St. Louis, Missouri, with two individuals. I'm sure they won't mind me saying their names, Jamie Reed and Lauren Legary. Jamie Reed was she worked in a pediatric gender facility, right, to help transition kids who were gender confused. She worked there for 5 years, and what she experienced through those 5 years and the practices of the facility, she became one of the largest whistleblowers that the United States has ever had in the gender care issue. So Jamie Reed sends me an email and says, hey, it looks like you guys are having a really important discussion in your school district around gender identity, and how do you wrestle this with policy and state law and all that stuff. Could we talk? And I was like, I mean, shoot, okay, why not, right? I read her website and checked out their information, and it looked like that they were compassionate and knowledgeable. Come to find out, Jamie Reed is an international expert on gender. Not Missouri, not United States, internationally recognized expert on gender. So I have a conversation with her, and I share, the policies in our district. I share the Maine Human Rights Act, all public information. I share that with her, and she says, we want to come to your next meeting. We'd love to speak to the board. Wow. Am I going to say no to that? I don't know. I wonder, right? I was wondering in my head, would any board member not want to hear about an internationally recognized gender expert on this? Right? So I was like, I'm sure that'd be great. So they booked their tickets, and I send a message to our chair, and I said, hey, we have some internationally recognized experts. These are their names. This is the group they belong to. Here's the information they have. They'd like to help us navigate this difficult topic that we're talking about, right? So I get a response, no, our agenda's full. So okay. And I did message, I sent a message to the chair, which is appropriate, right, for an agenda, in addition to the agenda. And I mentioned it to the full board, so they all could have access to the exact same information. I believe transparency is important, right? So I said, okay, well, they're coming, so I'm going to make a motion to edit our agenda to allow these two people to speak. Okay. So we go to the meeting. There's a motion to only allow district residents to speak, and it passes.
Before you even got a chance to make your motion,
and it passes.
Yeah.
I wish. I'm trying to choose my words carefully, Chuck.
Yeah.
We are.
Well, there's certain rules that you as a board member have to be very, very careful about. Like you can't. I think it's one of the weird things, in my opinion, about school boards, where if you're on a school board, if you speak disparagingly about any of the decisions that the school board makes, then you can be censured. And it's like, why is it that our school board members lose their right to free speech? I don't understand how that makes any sense, right? Like, why should you not be able to say, you could obviously say that you disagreed with it because you voted against it, right? Yep. But like, you should be able to say that it's absolutely ridiculous that the only reason that they voted to do that, I'll say it for you, but the only reason they voted to do that is because there was somebody specifically out there that had something to say that was relevant that they didn't want to hear.
I think that's possible. No, I'm gonna give them a little bit of a longer leash, right? Maybe our other board meeting, there are people who are not residents who said some pretty, inflammatory or things that they didn't want to hear. But you know what? It's America. And as a school board, we are an elected body. We are elected to ensure that the Constitution of Maine, right, is being followed. Well, Constitution of Maine, last I knew, guarantees free speech. We can't deny people who come and want to speak. We can't say, no, you can't, right? It's surprising. Think about the number of divorced families that have, right? The mom lives in district, the dad lives out of district. So now we're going to say the dad can't speak to the school board?
Right.
Thinking things through. Like, if you just take 2 seconds and you go, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Now,
more to the point. I'll also, I just want to interject this. Yeah. That there are people who want to speak, but they don't have enough information. They're not experts, and so they'll ask other people to come in and help them. Right. So, as an example, right, Alan Sarvinas with Parental Rights and Education, just about everywhere that this guy goes and he gets up and speaks at school board meetings, it's because parents in the district asked him to come because he's actually knowledgeable about the issue beyond most people. Right. And so you need these people to be able to come and speak on behalf of the parents who know the truth, but don't know how to communicate with boards. They don't know Robert's rules of order. They don't know all the bylaws. And it's like, people can sit there and be like, well, you should figure it out. And it's like, yeah, well, being a parent, parents working 2 jobs, raising kids, getting them all their sporting activities, making sure they do their homework, all that stuff is already a huge load on parents. So throwing, well, why don't you get more educated? Sure, they should. Great. But it's really difficult to do that given the way that everything is structured. And that's where people like Alan or other people come in. And in addition to the idea of a dad being out of district, his kids still go to school there. He should still be able to speak. I want to say this too, is if you hadn't told them that these people were coming, they wouldn't have done this, and they would have been able to get up and but during the public comment, they would have been able to speak.
Right. So long story short, right? Yeah. So after that motion passes, right, I disagreed with it because no, I'm all about public input. Whether I agree with it or not, it doesn't matter. If anyone watches the videos, trust me, I have been brutally attacked, false allegations, crazy. And I just stand there and listen. I can do it. So can everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So I made my motion to, since they adjusted public input, I made a motion to add to the agenda item of policy ACAA to allow these two experts to speak to that policy directly. And to my surprise and gratefulness, one board member changed their vote, so it 5-4 passed and allowed these two individuals to speak. So I think it was great, but but gosh, only passed 5-4. We are a school board. We are about education, or should be about education. It doesn't matter whether we agree with the expert testimony or not. That is not what's in question. We should hear all sides and consider all sides when we make a decision. Like, that's the role of a school board member. If you are so stuck in your way, in your viewpoint, you should not be on the board. That's not a good place for someone like that, right? Board members are not supposed to be politically, one way or the other. There's no Republican or Democrat by your name when people vote, right? It's one of the few places that is not partisan. It shouldn't be partisan, and I wish it wasn't partisan. Truly, I wish it wasn't partisan. The bottom line is that these two people came in. They did a wonderful job. They pointed out how that it's not following the Maine Human Rights Act. As a matter of fact, they pointed out 5 different reasons why it's not, and it's shocking. They said, look, it's not that it's not that you just turn it down. No, you just need to send the policy back to the legal entity that drafted it with these questions so that they can write a better policy. Because you can write a better policy that actually protects all students in your school district and doesn't potentially violate the rights of some and create opportunities for legal liability. You can close all those loopholes if you just do this. That's what they recommended to the board, and the board turned it down. They voted the policy through with that, and it's very frustrating, So I mean, you said earlier, it's important for people to get on school boards and fight. Yeah, we got to be knowledgeable. We got to be willing to read. We got to be willing to listen to people that we don't agree with, that have information. You got to do it.
Yeah, and we got to get more. I know that I actually mock this a little bit, so I in some sense, I wish everything was nonpartisan, right? Right. But at the other sense, we know that it's not. We know that it is partisan. We know that people are either leaning toward Republicanism or Democrat. They call it, or Democrat, right? And this impacts how they make their decisions on the school board. And so I think one of the things I guess that I would say is I think we need more conservatives to get on school boards, because what's interesting is, even if you're just you want to be in the middle, right? You want to be as nonpartisan as possible. What's really interesting is conservatives sometimes won't vote along with their values if they don't believe the people or the mood is with them, right? So if the room says we want this liberal policy, conservatives will back down, even if they hold the majority in some cases, right? Mm-hmm. Liberals will never do that. Right. Even if they know that they're going to lose their majority because their decision is going to lead the voters to vote against them and vote somebody else in, they're still going to vote in lockstep on these issues. And they're closed-minded. They've made up their mind. They think that everything that the Democrat Party pushes out is settled a fact, is science, settled science, whatever you want to call it. They at least operate that way, and they largely will not back down. I'm not saying there aren't a few out there, but in my experience, it's been very rare to find a liberal who's willing to vote against their party, even though they're not supposed to be partisan, on these issues. You will, however, see one of the things we commonly hear about is these people who are Republicans who get elected to school boards and city councils, and then end up being a little weak and not voting with us on some of these important issues.
Yeah.
And so if you wanted more nonpartisanship, you'd vote for Republicans.
Yes.
More conservatives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the values of a stereotypical conservative, right, align with respect. They align with not lying, not cheating, right? Not stealing, right? They come to, you respect your elders. Like, these are very conservative values, right? Whereas a more liberal value is, whatever makes the other person happy. Like, you have to change to make that other person happy. Well, there's no value set in that. So the value systems are just different. And I shouldn't maybe speak on the liberal value set because I'm not an expert on it. But I've often asked, like, where do your values come from? Like, what do you establish your principles on? And I have been told, like, literally, whatever makes me or the other person happy. That's their value set. Well, that value set is going to destroy you and your friend and everything around you, right? Yeah. Like, you have to have a bedrock, in I think it's important that people figure that out before you run for office. Like, what are your principles? What are your values? What are your ethics? Because from there, whatever decision they make, you're okay with it. You can live with it. It's not the end of the world, right? But when you say, like, my child can't look at another student who looks like a female, and use she, her pronouns because she looks like a she, you're going to discipline my child for that? Like, wait, you are actually encouraging my child to lie, and that is against my value set. And you can't do that, and you shouldn't. And then to find out that we're disciplining kids, every single parent should be concerned. We do not send our kids to school to be encouraged to lie. Right. And that is exactly what it is. You can't say, well, it's a white lie because it makes the other person feel better. A lie is a lie. It is something that is not true. Mm-hmm. And I care a lot about that. Right. So that's where it comes down to. I think, kind of rounding it all out, with girls in private spaces, because that's the other, video that went viral, is like, what? Females have their monthly period, when they're in high school. That's just the way it is, right? And there's lots of research about this. And actually, as a matter of fact, it's been in litigation throughout the United States, and courts have decided that forcing women to endure men in their private spaces is a hostile act. It is a hostile act. So with this policy, like, I'm just waiting. I'm just like, that's what it is. It's already been litigated, and we won't have the conversation as a board to say, like, look, we actually need to fix this. Yep. It's not okay, right? The decision made by the Maine Supreme Court that everyone likes to quote, if anyone's read it, let me give you the short summary. It's Doe versus Clenchy. And the Maine Supreme Court justices said, this is an extremely unique case. We do not expect and do not encourage the organizations, the authoritarian organizations, being schools, to allow a student to choose based on how they feel. Like, read the darn law, the outcome, that what the justices said. That's what they said. Yet we have students in almost every school district in Maine. They just tell their school counselor, hey, I don't feel like a boy. I feel like a girl today. And then they fill out a plan, and the student can choose the restroom of their choice. It literally is not supported by the decision laid down by the Maine Supreme Court. Like, what is it based on? It's not based on the Maine Human Rights Act. It's not based on the Maine Supreme Court. So I'd like to know, honestly, what is it based on? No one has been able to answer that. And I have asked, by the way, I've asked 3 law firms. 3. And no one can answer it. So
no one that supports it can answer it, right? Because I'm assuming you haven't asked law firms that are against it, or have you?
As a matter of fact, one of them I have. I have some written correspondence from. I don't want to out anyone here. But there's 2 different legal groups in Maine. One, obviously with that group in Missouri, they looked at it, so that was one. And then obviously our school district's legal firm has given their opinion, right? Which
I believe is probably Drummond and Woodson. I'm fine to throw them under the bus because they're they're the culprit in a lot of this stuff, and telling schools how to interpret this stuff. And what's really fascinating about it is that there are other conflicting viewpoints on this, and they're presenting their view as though it is the only view. You know,
they are entitled to their legal opinion. We would agree on that. That's why the school districts are paying them. They're paying them for their legal opinion, right? But with something that is so sensitive in our community, don't you think we should get other opinions? Like if I was diagnosed with cancer and it was given a cancer treatment plan, right? Because that is so catastrophic to my life and well-being, I'm going to seek a second opinion, right, on that plan. It makes sense. But no, so many board members are like, well, you know, our legal firm said this, and so that's what we're going to do. And it's like, just because you have one legal entity doesn't mean you shouldn't seek out the second opinion of another legal entity. People disagree and they bring in different viewpoints and different knowledge and all that. That's the whole point. We're an education institution. We should not bog down the system by constantly asking all this stuff. But when things are so heated on this one issue, clearly very heated on this one issue, we should seek a second opinion, maybe even a third, to make sure that we are writing the best policy we can write.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I think we really need to see happen, because I think you're right about a lot. You know what you're talking about. It's the short version, but I think one of the things that we need to see happen is we need parents who have had kids that were harmed in some way by these types of policies sue, because I think that if this they will win, and that's part of what we need to see happen in order to stop this nonsense. Because until something like this goes to court, it's all the theory of these law firms, right? But when it goes to court and it's heard and it goes to the district courts or whatever, the Supreme Court of the state of Maine, wherever it ends up going, that's when we're going to find out for sure. And I'm confident that girls who are harmed in locker rooms or bathrooms, or harmed on the field, or kids who are suspended for speaking freely. And like, it's one thing if you saw somebody who was like just trying to traumatize a like trans person, and just like, if they think they're a boy and they just keep saying she, right. And like, okay, that's harassment. That, like, I don't care if you disagree with what they think, but I'm talking about somebody, and that doesn't sound like what we're hearing. It sounds like somebody who just continues to use the pronoun that they believe to be true. But they should not be suspended for that. They should have legal standing. Somebody should be able to sue for this, and stop this nonsense and protect our girls. I mean, that's the ultimate thing that is so incredibly frightening about all of this, is how I think how much, like, I think there's a herd mentality of people who are on the Democrat side of the aisle, whether it's TDS, that's like, we have to agree with everything of the Democrats because Trump is the devil, and anybody who agrees with Trump, everything they do is wrong. There's this nonsense there. Like, I don't know what exactly it is, but the Democrats it's just completely in lockstep. They're not willing to think about things from a bigger perspective and look at additional opinions. They just like put their head in the sand and say, no matter what I see, I'm going to continue to say this. And I think that's the big part of the reason they don't want other opinions, is because they don't want it to cloud their judgment. They don't want truth to come in and make them question whether or not what they're doing is right. It scares them to hear other opinions. Partly there's the social pressure, fear. Everybody in their communities are all liberal, right? And they're afraid that if they don't stand up for what is currently deemed to be one of the most important issues, which is making sure that biological men can use women's bathrooms and play in women's sports, somehow that's paramount. Because, and again, I think this is part of the ideology, even though it's proven not to be true, as you kind of pointed out earlier. What they've been taught is, if males if people, somebody who thinks that they're trans is not supported in that, then they're likely to commit suicide, even though it's not fact. That's not true. But all these people have bought this, and it's just what they keep saying from everybody on the left. The only people who are questioning it are people on the right, and they don't trust people on the right because of Donald Trump. I mean, this is just a little bit of nonsense I'm throwing out here, but it's probably largely, there's a lot of truth in there. And so they refuse to question it because out of fear. And and it's frightening that they're willing to risk our young girls, and they're not willing to look into this deeper.
Yeah, no, it's you've said it well, right? Our young girls are being bothered. I think a lot of parents are like, well, it wasn't that bad, that I probably shouldn't bring a lawsuit because my child wasn't raped or my child wasn't attacked physically, right? Like they think a lawsuit. I mean, I think as a dad, when I think of a lawsuit, I mean, that's a huge risk. It's a huge expense that the vast majority of families, we don't have those kinds of funds to hire a lawyer on a retainer.
Right.
Like school districts taxpayers pay for their legal team. Like it does no cost. No, I put cost.
Right.
I mean,
right. Not to the board members anyway.
So like if I were to bring a lawsuit, right, I got to pay my lawyer and the district. Does not seem fair. But anyways, my point is, right, like they feel it has to be so egregious in order to bring a lawsuit, where the bottom line is it doesn't. It just has to be wrong, right? It just has to be wrong. And a lot of people can bring that stuff up. I mean, any parent whose child comes home and says, hey, look, I was bothered. I was made to feel uncomfortable in a designated space in the school, right? That's your red flag. Like, is that what you want your child to begin thinking that's okay? So for me, so I tell my daughters, I give them boundaries all the time. I'm their dad. That is what I do, right? I establish boundaries. No one should touch their private areas. A doctor, right? And no, not even parents at this point, right? Because my kids are old enough, right? So it's not like they're in their diapers. But they're old enough. Like a doctor is the only person that should touch their private areas. If anyone else decides to touch their private areas, that is a huge concern, and dad wants to know, right? And I'm not for lying. My kids are not allowed to lie. It really is something I preach all the time. So they are in a spot because you know what? Their school sends the message that if you don't affirm someone's chosen pronoun, then you are bullying them. That's the message my own daughters receive, right? And they're in a school in Michigan. I know that message exists here in Noble, that I'm a board member, right? And the majority of the board is not willing to change that, right? That's a wrong message. That is an unsafe message, because you just take that, you take that child and you send them to college or you send them away from home or whatever it is. And then someone says to them, just because this makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong. You see how nefarious that is? They are setting a seed to deny their biological reality, their biological warning signs, right? We are slowly eroding that away in schools under the auspices of it's the kind thing to do. It is not kind to have no boundaries.
Right.
That's where people really get hurt, Yep. So it's I wish I knew how to talk to it in a way that it would get people to open up their minds a little bit. There's the idea, right? Hey, I might want that Coca-Cola, right now, but if I keep drinking that Coca-Cola over and over and over and over again, it is going to harm me, right? And so I'm trying to think of all the different ways I can speak to someone and say, just because you think it's no big deal today doesn't mean it's actually no big deal. It might in truth be a very big deal, and you need to consider the wider impact of these smaller decisions.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I'd love to keep going, but I know you got to get on to a fun board meeting in just a few minutes. But obviously, as a result of the viral videos and just asking questions in the meeting, as we watched earlier, you were told that you were attacking people simply by asking a question. And they tried to censure you for asking these questions, and they were mad because it went viral. Just all kinds of nonsense, and all you're doing is asking questions that if they think that this is the right thing to do, they should be able to answer these questions. And they also should not be suspending children for free speech. Obviously, that's a huge issue. And I think one of the problems for people at home, if you don't know this, one of the reasons it's so important that we get some of these kids who have been impacted and them and their parents to work together to sue, is that that's the only way it can have standing. This is my understanding of the court system, right? It's wrong. We should be able to, we as a society should be able to, some people should get together and sue on this, but the courts will look at us and say that we don't have standing because we were not harmed by this policy. So in order for those lawsuits to be able to happen, we actually need somebody who has been harmed, who has standing to sue. Even if individuals, as you were saying earlier, something like, it's not that bad. It's like, even if individuals don't have it that bad, the problem is so pervasive and it's harming so many people that the collective harm is huge, but everybody is afraid because of social pressures, people losing their jobs potentially, and their kids being bullied, which is just crazy, right? But everybody's so afraid of the impact of that. But we need some brave people. This is a time where we don't have time for people to be afraid and sit in fear and live in fear. This is the time of courage. And so hopefully we can get some people to stand up like Josh. We appreciate what you're doing there, and we'll let you get to doing some more of it. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you all for watching. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe here, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. Get the content out there in front of people. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. See you all on Thursday. I'll be back again. Thanks.